Okay, welcome back to math class. Yesterday we learned about what prime factorization is, and in case you had forgotten, it's whenever we take a composite number and we rewrite it as a product of its prime factors. Today we're going to do the same thing, still prime factorization, but we're going to talk about what it means to factor monomials. Now, you might not be familiar with the term monomial, but what a monomial is, it's basically a number or variable or a product of numbers and or variables. Well, okay, so basically what I'm saying is a monomial is a number like 8, that's a monomial, or it's a variable like x, or it's a product of numbers and variables like 5y. These are all monomials. What a monomial is not is something, if I said 10x plus 2 minus 3, you see how these are separated by addition and subtraction signs? It means it is not a monomial. It's multiple terms. A monomial is just one term. A monomial is also not if I had 10 divided by x. It's not, you can't have a variable in the denominator. You can't be dividing by a variable. It's only numbers, variables, or products of numbers and variables, multiplying numbers and variables. Okay, so now that we know what a monomial is, let's practice factoring monomials. Just like I said at the top of the video, factoring a monomial, or prime factorization, is when we rewrite something as a product of its prime factors. So we're going to do the same thing with monomials, but it's going to be a little more complicated because they're variables this time. So let's look at something like 5x squared y to the third. That's a lot, but it's still just products of variables and numbers. So it's still a monomial, and we're going to pull it out into its pieces. 5 is already a prime number, so we don't have to worry about factoring the 5. So we're going to go 5 times, now we have x squared, and we know from our unit on exponents, x raised to the second power means x times itself 2 times. So we're going to go 5 times x times x. There are 2 x's because it's x raised to the second power. Then we have times y raised to the third power, which means y times itself 3 times. So we're going to go 5 times x times y times y times y. So we've got 5 times 2 x's times 3 y's, because we have x squared and y to the third. So far so good. Let's look at one more. Minus 12 q squared r to the third. Now the first thing we should notice about this is that it's got a negative sign at the front of it. That means that whatever our prime factorization ends up being, we have to have something that's going to make it negative. So we're going to start by multiplying everything by -1. So when we break 12 down, we start with -1. Now we need to figure out the prime factors of 12. you can either do that in your head if you feel like you can, or we can make a factor tree like we did yesterday. So 12, we're going to split it into 2 and 6. 2 is a prime number. 6 is not, so we can split 6 into 2 and 3. So our prime factorization of 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. So we have -1 because we have a negative sign here. Then I'm going to go times 2 times 2 times 3, because that's the prime factorization of 12. Now that I've gotten that sorted, I'm going to do our variables. And we have q raised to the second power. So that means it's q times itself twice. So I'm going to put times q times q. Q times itself twice. Then I have r raised to the third power, which is going to be r times itself 3 times. So I'm going to go times r times r times r. So this is our prime factorization of this monomial. We had to factor the number first, then the variables. We had 2 q's because it's r raised to the second power. Q raised to the second power. We had 3 r's because it's r raised to the third power. And then we're done.